Welcome along. Big news today. Starmer said he'd cut foreign aid and increase defence spending.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. Yeah. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027. That means we will cut our spending on development assistance.
Let's start, shall we, by sparing a thought for the Bangladeshi shrimp farmers, the queer community in Outer Mongolia, and, of course, Rory Stewart's wife's tribal army of Afghan basket weavers.
Stopped. Doesn't matter, you have a contract. So, Turquoise Mountain, which my wife Shoshana runs, has a contract, had another $1 million to go, money just stops.
Rory Stewart is talking about Trump there, of course, and I think this is all down to Trump. The US president came out and he said stuff like this.
Got it right anyway. I said they're taking advantage. I'm the one that got, and the Secretary General was here, as you know, 2 weeks ago, saying that if it weren't for me, NATO wouldn't even exist right now, because I raised from countries that weren't paying their bills. At that time, 28 countries, 20 of them were not paying their bills, 21 to be exact. They weren't paying. Or they were paying a very small portion. And I raised over $680 billion, that was the number he gave, by saying, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. And as soon as I said that, the money came pouring in.
Now we've seen what Starmer is doing, what he's been told. So Starmer's openly copied reforms policy. He's openly copied what the Conservatives' Robert Jenrick called for last March. And this is all down to Trump, because Starmer is on record absolutely slamming Boris Johnson for cutting foreign aid.
Cut is wrong because investing in 0.7% in international aid is in Britain's national interest. This has been a cross-party position for 20 years. Successive prime ministers have kept to the commitment. Every living prime minister thinks this is wrong. There's only one prime minister who's prepared to do this, and he's sitting there.
Yes, and just 2 weeks ago, Foreign Secretary David Lammy showed his tremendous intellect and political foresight by saying that Trump's cuts to foreign aid were a strategic mistake that could leave other countries more reliant on China. Well, it's a shame that Red Ed Miliband didn't get the memo, though. Now, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that his dad was a Marxist, but he's just signed us up to a load of Chinese-funded wind farms, despite the former MI6 chief warning against relying on China for energy. Anyway, back to defence spending. Starmer's going to spend 2.5% on defence spending by 2027, rising to 3% after 2030. OK, good. Well done. Well done. And this means spending less in pointless foreign aid projects like £9.5 million on supporting accountability and inclusion in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yeah, that's the country where militants have started beheading Christians. And I think, as you've just been hearing as well, kids have been eating bats and dying of diseases. Anyway, this needs to go hand in hand with other stuff. We need to cut back on domestic spending waste. The arts needs to be completely slashed. Screw it. All right, just scrap all the taxpayer funding for that. The taxpayer should not be funding weird Ponzi projects like the Europe that gay porn built. The taxpayer paid 840 grand for that research. And we need to scrap woke in the military. Remember this advert that saw infantry troops pause on their way to battle so a Muslim soldier could randomly start praying?
بجعلني مقيم صلاتي ومن ذرياتي ربنا تقبل الله ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Yeah, and the RAF not hiring white men. Well, I bet they wish they had more pilots now, don't they? On the face of it, though, Keir Starmer has done a good thing here. But it's President Trump who deserves all the credit. Let's get thoughts on my panel. We've got GB News superstar Alex Armstrong. We've also got senior reporter at Guido Fawkes, Ellie Wheatley, and journalist Jonathan Liss. Alex, I'll put this to you. I mean, is this just Trump in action?
Oh, it's just fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it shows to me how well, first of all, how easily it is to change Keir Starmer's mind. He knows he's got to take this dossier. He got that terrible dossier he got from his friends in the European Union just a few weeks ago and say, we want to be at the table with Ukraine. In order to do that, we've got to cut foreign aid, which, as you've correctly showed, Patrick, he has slammed multiple Conservative leaders over multiple times and tweeted about it as well. There's always a tweet with the Labour Party. But, you know, look, this is good news. And I want to praise the Prime Minister for doing this, because some of us have been saying this for years, haven't we? We've been saying, cut the nonsense, spend it on British people, spend it on our own defence, and that's the common sense thing to do. But, of course, as usual, it's coming a little bit too late. In some cases, we could have been doing this years ago.
Yeah, what do you make of this, Ellie? Do you think this is ultimately the right decision? Has it come under pressure from Trump?
Of course it is. But, you know, Starmer's been very politically shrewd here. The British public support it. 64% support cutting foreign aid. Obviously, this will please Trump when he goes to meet him on Thursday. But as always with these things, there are holes. So firstly, the sums don't quite add up here. So 0.2% cuts to foreign aid. The IFS predict will save about £6 billion. That means there's a 7.4 billion sort of black hole there. Also, there's questions over whether Starmer's sort of fudging and fiddling the numbers here. Not only is intelligence and security services included in this new budget uplift, but the government won't deny whether or not the Chagos surrender deals costs are included in that,
Is that a formal title?
Yes, it is. That's what we call it at Guido. But also, there's the question of whether or not the government will actually effectively deploy cuts to wasteful spending, like they have done in the US and DOGE. So they need a proper UK DOGE, not just to look at, you know, studying shrimps in Bangladesh and all that sort of thing, but as you say, Patrick, on domestic waste. I mean, as you noted, those woke, wasteful projects, there's countless projects and contracts on those, but also things like the government's just opened up a £540 million contract to train civil servants. Why can't they do that in-house? Things like that we should be looking at, and which is actually what we're doing at Guido with our UK DOGE project, of course. So he needs to probably fulfil that.
Jonathan, keen to get where you are on this, because I imagine you would naturally be against any cuts to foreign aid. So do you oppose the Prime Minister for doing this?
Well, it's refreshing to be on a panel at GB News where I'm attacking the government and everyone else is defending it. Much more of that, please. It's actually quite useful for me, because everyone accused me of being a Labour shill on this programme, and here I am going to go studs up. Well, not quite. There are two bits to this. The first thing is, I actually agree that we need to increase our defence spending, given the challenges we face. I know some people on the left think that we should leave NATO or sort of not invest in defence. I see where that argument comes from, but I don't think it's a pragmatic one. We can't think only sort of theoretically. We have to think about what's actually happening right now. And right now, there are concrete threats to our security, and we have a president in the United States who is now literally siding with Russia at the UN, siding with Russia, North Korea, even Iran abstained on the pro-Russia motion that Trump and the United States voted in favour of. This is really, really desperate stuff. Very, very worrying. So clearly, we have now the new German Chancellor saying that Europe has to basically assert autonomy from the United States, independence from the US. These are massive new sort of geopolitical building blocks that are hoving into view. So clearly, we need to step up to the mark. But that does not mean that the poorest people in the world have to pay the price for that. It should not be on the backs of the poorest people in the world. You know, when we talk about these...
We've got a lot of poor people in this country, Jonathan. But
Patrick, that's exactly my point. None of this is a zero-sum game. You don't have to...
You just want to tax
because you don't have to... Well, look, you have a mix of lots of things. There are lots of ways the government can raise revenue by sort of increasing taxes on the richest, for example, or increasing borrowing, or whatever it is. Obviously, we talk about these in sort of percentage terms.
Yep.
Actually, defence is 5% of expenditure, which is more than 2 points.
Do you think the army and the military in general also needs to drop all this woke dross? I mean, I showed you an advert there, an entire recruitment drive that appears to be based around pausing battle for the call to prayer. We've seen the RAF get done for discriminating against white men.
Yeah, well, you want your military to be the best people in the job, right? And meritocracy is the most important thing you can have in defence.
What's that got to do with having Muslim people praying?
Well, it's not. It's just the point is that if you want to attract the best people, surely they should just be attracted to the job, not whether or not they can pray in it.
That's completely separate.
Whatever. That's just a video. The point is there are tick box exercises that are excluding highly qualified and potentially very good young men who we won't be able to get those jobs, and we should absolutely do that. And also, just wanted to say, spare a thought for David Lammy at the moment.
Bless him.
Mustn't forget Sudan. Mustn't forget
it's rarely off my mind, Sudan, actually. I mean, but David Lammy, I mean, just 2 weeks ago, he was criticising Trump rowing back on foreign aid.
Because it made it zero. Trump is basically effectively disbanded. So there was a story today about Marco Rubio, the new Secretary of State, sort of approving sort of vital sort of AIDS care in Africa, for example, and those 19-year-old interns of Musk sort of manually vetoing them.
Okay.
So this is different.
I just want to drag you back slightly to the UK because you were mentioning there about some potential issue with the Chagos surrender deal, as you call it. Why is that important to our viewers and listeners? Because the government is refusing to say that would be part of this defence money.
Yeah,
Well, explain that.
So effectively, we are paying Mauritius to give up our British sovereignty.
Yeah.
So there was an island called Diego Garcia, which is a US-UK military air base, which obviously is vital for our national security and interest. And so whether or not that money that we pay, which is around 90 million a year, which it could get to 18 billion, the figures vary. Again, there's lots of secrecy over this deal. Whether or not that's actually included in the 2.5% of GDP by 2030. I mean, that's what we're sort of getting at here. Is he fiddling with the figures here by saying that actually, yes, we're increasing spending, but actually he's including stuff that he's already committed to, which is also not in the British. So you think it might
potentially be a fudge of the numbers just to appease Trump ahead of his meeting with him on Thursday?
I mean, we don't know. This is the thing. They won't say.
He would get found out. He would get found out very quickly.
They've been asked. The government's been asked, and they will refuse. They've been refusing to deny the
Is Keir Starmer just Trump's poodle now, then?
I hope not. I don't know. I hope not. I think that, obviously, there is an effort to ingratiate himself with the new president. This is a president who responds very well to flattery, as we know. Macron is a master of it. I'm sure that Starmer would like some of that. So this is, in a way, look, taking my own personal opinion away from it, it's a shrewd move. It's already won a sort of approval of the new Secretary of Defence in the United States. It's something. It goes some way to doing what Trump wants, and that is a good position to be in. And this comes back to soft power, Patrick, and that's the fundamental point that I want to make in this point about international aid, because this is about Britain's influence in the world. It's about how Britain sort of asserts its influence and interest. It's also about the poorest people in the world. Yes, but in terms of the international aid, we are ceding the ground to other people if we don't do this ourselves.
OK, all right. Well, look, loads more still to come. No doubt they'll be on the front pages, and I think we can nudge it on a little bit later on in the show, and we talk about whether or not we're actually preparing for some kind of war footing. Is this the first step? Will we end up with some kind of conscription service, or whether it's national service or whatever, which, by the way, is not uncommon in loads of other countries. But anyway,